Oh. Okay, so we'll start our towards topic of colorectal diseases, and today we are going to talk about colorectal tumors. As I said in previous lecture, these tumors takes the majority of the disease in the colorectal module. And I have written colorectal myself because although these tumors are a little bit different in their behavior, but the general plans and the more or less the symptomology which I showed you a slide previously also is the same. So we'll take it together, or wherever I find there is some difference in the behavior or the symptomology of these two tumors, I will let you know. Can you see the slides?
Yes, sir.
So before I go into the depths of the colorectal tumor, this is a general outline which you can use for any tumor anywhere in the body, which I try to write it. But it does not mean that whenever you get a question about any tumor, you reproduce this slide for every tumor. This is just a slide to show you what should be the outline of management of any tumor, specifically in regard to the colorectal tumor. So when you have taken a focused history, when you have done a focused examination, you will come up with certain diagnosis. So for tumor, you need to confirm your diagnosis. And you have different modalities. You can use imaging, you can use some endoscopic examination or certain other specific investigations which may be different for different tumors. So imaging, commonest imaging is ultrasound, CT scan, MR. So this can help you confirm your diagnosis, decide other information. Gastroscopes, colonoscopes, endoscopic pancreatography, ERCP. So there are a lot of endoscopic examination which we can do to confirm our diagnosis. So when we have confirmed our diagnosis, we need to take a biopsy. You need to take a tissue diagnosis of that tumor. So you can take a biopsy by different route. It can be a fine needle aspiration cytology, it can be a through cut, it can be incisional biopsy, it can be excisional biopsy. Through cut, I assume you know, it is a special needle which take a piece of this tissue itself. So FNSE is slightly different because we just put a small needle and just take few cells. So this is a cytology. The rest of the biopsies are for tissue diagnosis. So when you have confirmed your diagnosis and you have information, tissue diagnosis also, okay, this is a tumor, then what you will do next? You need to stage the disease. Okay, how far it has already spread. And for that, you will again, first of all, need some imaging, which may be in the form of CT scan, MRI, sometimes PET scan, and sometimes certain different tumors can help. The radionuclide scan can help you, and many other uh, imaging modalities and other methods to identify the regional and distant spread of the disease. So when you have a diagnosis based on your clinical data, that is history, examination, you will stage the disease according to the clinical data. When you have a tissue diagnosis, a histopathological diagnosis, you will stage the disease according to pathological data. So the staging can be with the help of the TNM, the most common widely accepted TNM classification, and it is written C and P. This is clinical TNM and this is pathological TNM. And the staging of the disease, which incorporates the TNM and defined in a much simplified form. And for certain tumors, some specific staging. We will see in colorectal also, there are some specific staging for the colorectal also, specific names. So grading is a pathological grading. The tumor can be well differentiated, poorly differentiated. We will see later. So once you have staged the disease, you have confirmed your diagnosis, then you have to manage the patient. You have to give a treatment plan. For first of all, you need to talk to the patient and relatives what is going wrong with the patient, because it's a serious problem. So you need a proper counseling, proper informed consent from the patient and from the relatives. Very important. Then you advise a treatment plan. Generally, the tumors are for surgeons. Not all, but generally, depending upon the stage of the tumor are for surgeons. So surgical treatment is the top choice for any tumor. You have to remove the tumor. You have to get rid of that tumor burden in the body. Then is the radiotherapy, giving radiations, chemotherapy, and sometimes hormonal therapy for different set of tumors. Which one is the first you want to give? That can also vary in different tumors and according to the different stage of the tumor. So that is why I told you that relevant treatment plan is very, very important to understand. Sometime we'll be doing surgery first, sometime we'll be giving chemotherapy first or radiotherapy first, and sometimes start with the hormone and continue hormone. So these things will vary. How we'll do in colorectal, we'll see later. Once you have done your treatment, then comes the follow-up, which is also very important. Follow up for two reasons: to see any complications, what the treatment you have given, and also any recurrences of the tumor which can happen, any spread of the tumor which can happen later on. This is also very important. And if you have done some major resections or some major part of the body has been removed, or patient is has some psychological disturbances after this problem or chemotherapy issues, so patient will need some rehabilitation also. So these are the commonest tumors which we can see in colonic area and the rectal area, and the most of the bulk is taken by the adenocarcinomas. About 90% plus of colorectal tumors are adenocarcinomas, which can be mucinous and signet cell rings. And there are other varieties, but these are the most common varieties. In addition, we can see some carcinoid tumors, which you must have heard related to the appendix, but it can happen anywhere in the colorectal areas. Lymphomas can happen everywhere in GIT as well as in the colorectal area. Gastrointestinal stromal tumors, GIST. This is also a common tumor which you can see anywhere. Then come the leiomyosarcomas and sometimes melanomas, not very common, but the patient can come. Usually it happens in the cutaneous areas, the tumors of the anal canal, and sometimes in the lower rectum also. So these are the various tumors. Okay, you should be aware of these tumors. So colorectal cancer tumors incidence is rising, and majority and 1/3 of the tumors happen in the rectal areas. Now, this term adenoma carcinoma pathway, you need to remember this because this can be asked in the examination. It always starts, colorectal tumor always start from a benign pathology, which is adenoma. And then later on, something happens and it passes and converts into the carcinoma. The colorectal carcinomas are notorious with this APC gene. So anybody can tell me what this APC stands for?
Adenomatous polyposis coli gene.
Right. So this is the precursor of the colorectal cancer, and those adenomas, those patients who has these adenomas and they come up with this identified APC, they will have the carcinoma later on. And this is the initiating gene which start the process of this cascade of the events which convert into a simple benign pathology to a malignant pathology. Then comes the KRAS. Anyone else can tell me what KRAS stands for? It stands for Custine rat sarcoma. So this is also initiating factor, another gene जिसमें mutation when happens, it is another initiating factor for this cascade. And then P53 proteins, on if they are present, this shows the signs of aggressiveness of the tumor. The tumor is invasive. It always starts from small polyps, and these polyps can vary in different histological pattern. And the most notorious polyps are the villus adenomatous polyps. So this is the adenoma carcinoma pathway. It starts from the normal colon up to the carcinoma with invasiveness because of P53 mutation. And this is the APC proteins which are present, which is later on followed by KRAS, which actually KRAS acts as a signal for these oncomutations. And then later on, this invasiveness starts, and this is the cascade. This is another diagram showing a normal colon endoscopic view, and later on converting into a small polyp which is pedunculated. This is a pre-cancer, and then later on the polyp has changed its shapes and formed a cancer. And this cascade usually takes about a decade, 10 to 15 years. So these polyps start in early teens, and the patient will have, if they start in early teens, the patient will have the cancer in 25 years plus age. So what are polyps? Polyps are small pedunculated protrusions of the mucosa, and there are basically 4 types of polyps: inflammatory, metaplastic, neoplastic, and hematomatous. They can happen as a single polyp anywhere, and they can happen as a multiple, containing gut can have 100 of polyps. These 3 conditions, adenomatous polyps, FAP, familial adenomatous polyps, and hereditary non-polyposis colorectal cancer, which is also called as Lynch syndrome. Try to remember these terms because these are important for examination point of view. The other term you should be knowing is Peutz-Jeghers polyps. So this is a polyp, a simple benign polyp. There are 2 types of polyps: a tubular polyp, which is sort of a long stalk, like a berry on a stalk, and a villus adenoma, which are these flat lesions. So villus adenomas have more malignant potential. The patient will come with simple rectal bleed at an early age. Sometimes the door rectal tumors, which the polyps can have some mucus discharge also. So the simplest examination is to do a DRE, digital rectal examination. If you can feel the polyp, all the polyps has to be removed. You can use a colonoscope. If the polyps are very small, you can use a snare. If it is a flattened, broadened lesion, you can use some this can be done by colonoscopy. And if there are very large lesions, then you have to do a surgery from anal canal, which is called transanal endoscopic microsurgery. The other name is TEMS, TEMS. So you can use this, and you have to take a biopsy. Any polyp more than 0.5 centimeters, some book says 1 centimeter, has to be removed. If you identify it, they have to be removed, because if the polyp is about 1 centimeter size, the incidence of malignancy is 10%. And if the polyp becomes 3 centimeter, the malignancy incidence becomes 30%. So all the polyps greater than 0.5 centimeter has to be removed and tissue diagnosed. So familial adenomatous polyposis, this is a syndrome, a very important syndrome. It is autosomal dominant, runs in families, and this characterized by the presence of hundreds of adenomas, and sometime in duodenum also, and sometimes some extra colonic or extra intestinal manifestations like epidermoid cysts, like brain tumors, desmoid tumors. So this can happen anywhere, in gastric glands, in stomach also. So as I told you, this is autosomal dominant. So patient will have positive family history. And in this case, 20% will have some mutation in the APC gene. And if you diagnose FAP in a person, he has a risk of colorectal cancer 100%. And because it has a very strong family history, all the siblings, all the brothers, all the sisters, even if they do not have any symptomology, they need to be screened. And some sort of prophylactic surgery is indicated. If you find a child who's 10 years or 12 years, you confirm it. You wait up to 15 years to see how it behaves, but not more than 15 years. Or all the FAPs are usually diagnosed before the age of 30 years. And if there are no adenomas by the age of 20 years, then FAP is very unlikely. So what you will do in a patient who has FAP, you will think that he is going to get cancer at the age of 20 plus or 25 plus. So he would need some prophylactic surgery. His brothers, his sisters, his family members, if they remain undiagnosed somehow, they will need some surgical options. We have seen patients, the mother has brought the child diagnosed as FAP. When we surveyed, screened the father or the mother, they had positive colorectal cancer. So the answer of treatment for FAP is colectomy. Just remove whole of the colon. Just remove whole of the colon. No other shortcuts. Total colectomy. And if you remove the rectum also, this is called proctocolectomy. Try to remember these technical terms. So colectomy, total colectomy with or total proctocolectomy is a major procedure. Obviously, when you remove the colon, you have to anastomose the ileum with the rectum. And if you have removed the rectum also, you have to anastomose the ileum with the anus. And sometimes it is not feasible to anastomose, so patient will end up in endoleostomy, which can be later on reconstructed. So what is the treatment option for diagnosed case of FAP? The answer is without cancer. Now, who has diagnosed case of FAP and now has come with a colorectal cancer of sigmoid colon, let us assume, the answer would again be total colectomy. And any portion of the intestine you have left, if you have left the rectum, you have to usually biopsy the rectum for cancer screening. And if later on you find this rectum is changing, this has to be removed also. The other important syndrome is the HNCC, another autosomal dominant condition, and this has 80% chances of colorectal cancer. The other characteristic of this is it can be associated with the cancer of endometrium and cancer of the ovary and stomach and small intestine. So there are two criteria for diagnosing this hereditary non-polyposis colorectal cancer. The ideal investigation would be genetic testing. All the patients you are suspecting should have genetic testing, and if genetic testing shows this is it, then it is diagnosed. But sometimes genetic testing is not possible, so we use this Amsterdam type 2 criteria. It is modified criteria. So first of all, you need to have some histological examination, which will tell you it is this HNPCC. Then FAP has to be ruled out, and at least one tumor should have been diagnosed before age of the 50 years, and one relative should be first degree. So these are the few criteria. If the person fulfill these criteria, we will label it as HNCC. So importance because chances of colorectal cancer later on with other cancers. So what causes these colorectal cancers? Genetic, I have already told you. So there are certain hereditary factors. This is written in your luck. You can't change it. If you have it, you will develop the cancer. So these are the hereditary factors. Then there are certain risk factors which are modifiable, which are under your control. If you take care, you will not develop the cancer. Let smoking, meat, processed meats, we can include fast food in this also. Alcohol intake, red meat, low fibers, low fruits, low intake of vegetables. If person is obese, high BMI, so these are the factors which increases the risk, and all of them you can modify, you can change. This is under your control. And these factors, if you do it, they will decrease the risk. Your activities, high fiber diet, dairy products, fish intakes, nuts, plenty of vitamins, calcium supplements. So these modifiable, these are also under your control, and they will decrease the risk. Some other factors related to drug-induced, statin-induced, HRTs, male are more prone to develop colorectal. Type 2 diabetes are more prone to colorectal. Same is with inflammatory bowel disease. They are more prone to colorectal. So how does a patient of colorectal tumor present to us in emergency? They can present to us in emergency, or they can present as an elective case. When they come in an elective case, they come with abdominal mass, with the bleeding per rectum, weight loss, altered diarrhea, anemia, and when they come as an emergency, they can come as obstructive lesion causing large gut obstruction. The tumor can perforate. The tumor itself can perforate, or tumor can cause obstruction, and that obstructed gut can also perforate. And all these perforated tumors present as peritonitis. And we say when the tumor is perforated, whatever the TNM classification or staging was before, now it will change and it will convert into stage 4. The tumors can bleed, and they can bleed massively. And patient can present with metastatic disease to the liver, to the lungs, with their associated issues. So how would you manage the elective cases will be different, and how would you manage the emergency cases will be different. In emergency cases, the main aim would be to save the life first of the patient. And when the patient is optimized, resuscitated, then you have to deal with the tumor. So again, another slide showing different symptomology of the colorectal tumors, the bowel habits, bleeding, abdominal pain, lethargy, jaundice, unexplained weight loss, emergency presentations, distension, peritonitis, perforations, rectal bleed. Very interestingly, the right-sided colonic tumors and the left-sided colonic tumors, they behave differently as regards the symptoms are concerned. Why is that? Because cecum, ascending colon, and part of the transverse colon, the lumen is larger as compared to the descending colon and the sigmoid colon. The contents are more semi-solid on the right side. When they go to the left side of the colon, they become more solid. So that is why on the right-sided tumors, when they come to you, they don't come very early. They come late. The tumor starts bleeding. The patient will have anemia. The tumor will become big in size. The patient will have some mass in the right iliac fossa, in the right hypochondrium, in the right paracolic gutter, and certain other non-specific symptoms. But on the left side, they present early because they obstruct early. They alter the bowel habits very early because the contents are different. The lumen is narrow. So they left-sided tumors present early and the right-sided tumor present late. So right-sided tumors in the cecum and ascending colon, you can see they come as 70% of these patients will come as abdominal mass. Other symptoms will be there, but mostly mass, anemia, weight loss, painful areas, because these tumors get time to get bigger, get time to spread. The left-sided tumors, less chance of mass, bleeding will be more, change in the bowel habits will be more, 60%. Patient will have obstructive symptoms, 20%. On the right side, it is 5%. And the rectal tumors, because they are very close to the anal canal, what will be the Major symptom, bleeding, and the change in the bowel habits, which will be immediately reflected. 80% change in the bowel habits signifies that something is going on in the rectal area. So this is another interesting slide. Now, how the tumors are distributed. The most common site of the tumor are the rectums, 38%, followed by the sigmoid column and cecum. The rest you can see very well. So the most common tumors what we see in our clinical practice are the rectosigmoid area, which are the most commonly affected tumors. So how you are going to investigate? General investigation and specific investigations. General investigation, the main purpose would be because you as a surgeon, you will be planning for some sort of surgery. So you need to have some investigation for the patient fitness for surgery, fitness to be get general anesthesia. So you will have some blood counts, renal function, liver functions, coagulation profile, chest X-ray, ultrasound abdomen as a part of general investigation to see any involvement of the liver mets, chest X-ray, which can show you the chest X-ray as such, also if there are any mets there. The specific investigation, fecal occult blood. So, who will tell me what fecal occult blood means? G.
सर जो नेकेड आई से ब्लड ना देखा जा सके उसे माइक्रोस्कोप पे देखते हैं.
Right. So, which blood is not evident to the patient and it is hidden. So, this test is not used for diagnosed or confirmed cases of carcinomas, but it is basically used for screening purposes. In those areas, in those families which are high risk groups, so we use it as a screening. CEA level tumor marker, carcinoembryonic antigen levels are not used to confirm the diagnosis. They are basically have prognostic value. It means a patient who has a diagnosed case of colorectal cancer will have may have high level of CEA, but you will not diagnose it with the help of CEA. But after surgery, you will want to have a baseline level and follow the patient with CEA level, because if the CEA level after the treatment start rising, it means the tumor is recurring. So it has a good prognostic value. Then proctosigmoidoscopy and colonoscopy, you need to see the tumor, you need to take a biopsy of the tumor. For that, you need to see the rectum, the sigmoidoscope, and the colonoscope. Ultrasound abdomen, as well as the endoanal or endorectal ultrasound. The other name is transrectal ultrasound, TRUS, TRUS. For lower rectal and anal canal tumor, this is a very good investigation. I think later on I'll show a picture also, which can very easily tell you the presence of the tumor local and the regional spread of the tumor. CT abdomen and pelvis, this is also very good with double contrast. MRI. So who can tell me when you would do a CT scan and when you would want to do an MRI in a patient of colorectal tumor? G. Okay, I answer it. For colonic tumors, remember, for colonic tumors, the CT abdomen pelvis is preferred. For rectal tumors, MRI is preferred. Why? Because the part of the rectum, most 2/3 of the rectum is extraperitoneal. And the lymphatic spread of the rectum is behind the rectum in front of the sacrum. So to see that portion, MRI pelvis for rectal tumor is much preferred. The CT will not give that much. It can give certain clues, but it will not give that much information. So if your question is, what is the good investigation? How will you diagnose a regional stent of a rectal tumor? You will prefer to say MR. And if you are asked about colonic tumors, you will say CT abdomen pelvis. Generally, what we do is when a patient comes with a chronic tumor, we get a CT chest, abdomen, and pelvis as a part of initial survey, because chest mets can also be seen by CT scan. But chest X-ray is also not bad. It's very quick, and if you find chest X-ray mets in the chest X-ray, that is more than enough. Contrast studies, simple contrast studies, you can do, but if you have a CT abdomen with contrast, that would be a better. Simple contrast study means you ask the patient to drink barium or you give a barium and take an X-ray. But CT abdomen pelvis is much more specific. PET scan, positive emission tomography scan, is not usually used as an initial part of investigation, but it is usually used later on for recurrences, or if the CT or MRI is doubtful, it doesn't pick the tumor, and your history and examination tells you there has to be a tumor, and the CT and MRI is not picking the tumor. So at that confusing point, you can use PET scan initially, but usually PET scan is reserved for later cases. So this is a proctoscope with the obturator. These are the instruments sometimes you get in your OSPI stations. This is a sigmoidoscope. It has a light source. It has this tube with a bellow at the end to inflate air. And this light source which illuminates. Proctoscope may be up. You can see this small thing. This is also for light source. Proctoscope varies in different sizes. These are both daycare investigations. And this is a full-length colonoscope for to see the colonoscope. Imaging, double contrast barium enema, you can see apple core deformity or deformity, another deformity. CT scan, you can use CT virtual colonoscopy, and as I already mentioned, rectal cancer requires MRI. So these are a few pictures. This is a CT scan showing liver. This is a big liver. This is a vertebra. This is the spleen. This is a huge liver which is enlarged and shows many small dark areas. These are the liver mets due to any problem, but chronic problems also. This is the aorta. This is another CT scan, but aorta. This is the right side, left side. This white area is a contrast in the small gut, and this large mass present in the right side of the abdomen is the cecal tumor, carcinoma of the cecum. This is another diagram showing another mass, probably in the hepatic flexure, because this is the cecum now. So this is slightly distal in the cecum, and this in the hepatic flexure or in the transverse column. This is TRUS, transrectal ultrasound. This is the probe, and this is the anal canal. These whitish structures, if you can appreciate, these are the sphincters of the anal canal. These white lines, white circular lines. And in this area, you can see there is sort of a gap or sort of filling defect. And all these sphincters are gone. So this is a locally advanced anal tumor. So you can well appreciate how these tumors can spread, and this investigation can be very important. So basically, when you see the tumor with the colonoscope, these 4 types you need to remember. It can be an annular variety, it can be a tubular variety, it can be a sort of a polypoidal or a cauliflower growth-like variety, and it can be ulcerative variety. So these annular, tubular, cauliflower, ulcerative, 4 types you need to remember. Ulcers and cauliflower growth can bleed. Annular and tubular can obstruct. And when you see under the microscope, you will get well differentiated, moderately differentiated, poorly differentiated. Obviously, poorly differentiated will have worse prognosis. Well differentiated will have good prognosis. So histological type, what sort of tumor you are going to get also matters. How the tumor spread. Colorectal tumor spread by locally. in the longitudinal direction of the colon, circumferentially. Around the structures around the colon, the rectum, they can all get involved if it's spread locally. So that is why CT and MR can tell you what is the loco-regional extent of the tumor. It can involve the ureter behind the colon, it can involve the duodenum on the right side, it can involve the pancreas on the left side. In the rectum can involve the prostate, the seminal vesicle, the vagina, the uterus. And lymphatic spread, the most common spread of the clotting. I told you about the 3 stations, and there is another diagram later on which I can emphasize later on. Via blood to the liver, chest, adrenals, brain. And sometimes the local shedding of the tumor from the serosa can posit as a peritoneal mets. So this is the lymphatic slide. 3 stations, red, blue, and yellow. So red stations are the pericolic stations, pericolic or epicolic. You can see they are present on the which artery? The marginal artery of Drummond, the red stations, the red lymph nodes. Then come the main vessels, the ileocolic branch of spira mesenteric, the right colic, the middle colic, the left colic branch of mesenteric. These blue, they are called as the principal lymph nodes. Principal lymph nodes. Then come the yellow. They are the central group of lymph nodes. They are present on the main vessels, the superior mesenteric artery and the inferior mesenteric artery. And the white node as paracentral. They are actually present on the aorta itself. So the more the lymphatic clearance you do, for example, if the tumor is present in the cecum, so the more lymphatic clearance you can do up to the, at least up the central lymph nodes is a must. The better the tumor surgery would be. Because if you just remove the cecum, you leave all the lymph nodes, it is incomplete, inadequate surgery. So you have to make a V from cecum. You make a V like this. So tip of the V would be the main vessels, the yellow part. So try to remember the principal lymph nodes, the blue lymph nodes, the paracolic, the red lymph nodes, and the central yellow. And nowadays, the studies are going on which are showing that to remove the paracentral lymph nodes is also helps in better prognosis of the disease. So this is the Duke staging for colorectal. Now you have to stage the disease. Initially, the Duke staging of this was used for just for rectal tumors, but now it is also used for the colonic tumor. I have just been messaged that time is 8:45, so we'll stop here, and later on we'll continue with the Duke staging in the next lecture. So if you have any question up so far, just you can ask.